Hey, greetings. Peace to all of you. I want to take a little bit of time and talk to you some more about endurance, some elements of endurance, and we're going to take a look at the Passover cycle that takes place, all the spring feasts. I'm just going to give you a quick, really fast overview, and we're going to be doing more studies over this in the next few weeks. But if anybody has learned endurance, it would be the children of Israel throughout history. And I want to take just a look at a few passages real quick as we look at the Passover feast. Matthew chapter 5, verse 17, 18. Jesus said they didn't come to annul or to abolish the law or the prophets, but to fulfill them or to fill them in, and take that template and to cause it to be filled up so that you understand what that template is, that model. And so this season that we're in right now really is that. Colossians 2, 16, 17 is a passage that I have encountered so often whenever I begin to talk to people about the feast. Knee-jerk response is, oh, brother, we don't have to do that. We've been set free from that. And I don't want to get into a big argument about that, but I do want us to take a look at some key phrases within that passage that will help us. Because it says it is a shadow of things to come. The feast, it says, don't let anybody judge you regarding the feasts and new moons and Sabbaths, because they are a shadow of things to come. And this was written to the church at Colossae. So you have something that is post Jesus filling in the blanks, letting us know that there are still yet things that have not been fulfilled. We have the entire fall feast that are still being addressed. So in particular, the Feast of Booths, which will be the final supper, the Lord's Supper. So that'll take, that's when we all gather together. But there's a template here that we find in the spring feast, which is the Passover time point. And so from the Passover meal that Moses instituted, things begin to evolve. We see that the Passover meal is also a template for the marriage covenant. And if you study the Ketubah marriage contracts, all of that, we see that overlays with even the Lord's Supper, and how that is a covenant model of how that the bride and the groom, they make the agreement. All of that falls underneath the model of the Seder meal, as well as covering all of the situation with Moses leading the children of Israel out. So whenever you do a Seder meal, it can last 2 to 3 hours easily, covering just the storyline, because there's a lot of traditions that have been involved in it, of the matzah bread and all of that. And you see that throughout history, Jesus fulfilled that and filled in the blanks with so many of those elements. So it's just super, super rich. And we're not going to get into all that. I just want to do a really quick overview and say to you this, is that Jesus is the substance of all of that. So don't get stuck in the shadows, because the shadow is just a shape of the Messiah. The Messiah casts a shadow, a shape. We're not obsessed with the shadow, we're obsessed with the Messiah. So don't get obsessed with whether you're not doing the feast right. And that's what I think Paul was trying to say was, look, there's a lot of traditions and a lot of elements, but the point of doing a Seder meal or taking a look at the feasts of Passover or any of the feasts is it's supposed to point you to your relationship with God and things that he's trying to teach us. And so there's 3 points that take place during the Passover window of time. You got 8 days and 3 different feasts, we call a feast, or appointments, things to look at. He's pointing at 3 different elements that take place there. One is the meal, where you go into the house, the blood is on the doorpost, and you stay there, and that's really kind of what we're experiencing right now. And so the thing that we learn from that, the substance of that is you have to be under the covering of the blood of the spotless Lamb, and that is Messiah Jesus. And that's the number one. That's what you need to draw away from the Passover types and shadows. The number 2 thing is this: it is also the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and that is where God deals with the leaven in our lives, and we come before the Father and we say, take out all of those things in our life that puff up but don't build up. And so we're in a season right now where there's been a lot of things that have been puffed up in our life that have not really built up. And I'm not talking about your job. I'm talking about all of our little obsessions that we've had because we have been a recreation, entertainment driven culture. And so that stuff has been removed because it's just puff up stuff, really. I'm sorry, but it is. So those things have been removed so that we can focus on what really matters. And so the leaven is being removed. And so during this season, we're checking out the things that are puffed up in our life that aren't essential. So we're getting rid of those things. And the third feast are the things that God points to, and that was where Jesus was resurrected on first fruits, called Bikurim. It's the Hebrew word. So we have the first fruits, and that's Jesus' resurrection, and is a sign of things yet to come, which will be our resurrection in the ages to come. So that's beautiful. Those are the three primary points. And there's a lot to all this, and we're going to cover some of this stuff, and we're also looking toward 50 days after that feast is Pentecost. That's what I'm really getting excited about. I've got a few resources that I want to point out to you because people are asking, saying, Pastor, well, how do you know this stuff? It's been several years of studying this topic, kind of saturating myself in it. But not too long ago, we did the Feasts of the Bible. We did a video series and a workbook with it, and that's Sam Nadler. And he's got stuff online you can look at and get the book. Christ and the Passover, great book. And the Jews for Jesus is the guy that founded that. And it's a great little resource to help you understand and see Jesus in the Passover. And it's like $5 on eBay. And Celebrating Biblical Feasts is another great book that I have, and that's by Martha Zimmerman. And it really walks through and shows you how to do a messianic or Jesus-based Passover meal. So it's got a lot of how-tos in that. It's a great resource. And then here's one of a series of books that I have, and it's called Unrolling the Scroll. It's by First Fruits of Zion, and there's just a lot of richness. It's one of several volumes, and it's just full of richness. And in saying all of that, I wanted to kind of do a disclaimer here, because there's a lot of traditions and beautiful richness that we find as we begin to study the feasts, the types and shadows. But here's my disclaimer: is be very careful that you don't get focused on the shadows and miss the substance, because we can find our identity in the substance, or in the traditions rather than in the substance. So be careful that you don't run down a rabbit hole and become arrogant because you think you know a little bit more than the guy down the street that doesn't have a full revelation of Passover. That is absolutely what Paul is dealing with. He's saying, do not get arrogant, thinking that you know more about heritage or lineage of your ancestry or any of that stuff. It's all about Messiah. So Paul was constantly dealing with this, trying to find that tension, the balance between understanding law, understanding grace. He deals with it throughout the letters. And so for you and I, we're in this window of time where we're trying to figure out really what's going on. Let's not get obsessed with Pharaoh. Let's not get obsessed with all these other elements, Rome or the government or a senator or a Congress. Right now, does God have us? And he allowed the entire earth to move into a Passover season so we can humble ourselves before the Lord and then go forth with rejoicing, because God's got a fantastic plan after Bikurim, or after first fruits, whenever we come out of Egypt. So God bless you. I pray that the word begins to build you up, and we're going to be talking more about the Passover in the days to come. Shalom.